Welcome to the 6th chapter of the book of Zechariah. We can return with another vision that doesn't actually say a vision, but it's something that he seen. He lifted his eyes, so he saw it. So it was I call it a vision. I turned and lifted my ophthalmos and beheld. And now there probably should be a semicolon there, a period, and a capital A. It starts, and then behold, 4 chariots were going forth from out of the midst of 2 mountains. Duo, we have dio in Greek, 2, meso, midst. All these are derivatives. And the mountains were mountains of brass. Well, I kept tossing and turning, trying to think, now what in the world are these? What could be these 2 mountains, and they're mountains of brass? I couldn't find anything of mountains of brass except for here in Zechariah. I put the 2 words together, oros and halka, and I couldn't find anything in the Bible that had mountains of brass except for this place here. The only thing that I could think of is in Revelation 1:15. It says, talking about, I believe, Jesus, and his feet were likened to fine brass, as in a furnace being with fire. And so the feet, well, you have 2 feet. So that would be 2 things of fine brass. And then in Revelation 2:18, thus says the Son of God, the one having his eyes as a flame of fire and his feet likened to fine brass. So now were these 2 mountains, something to do with the divinity, the divine of Christ, and it says, and the chariots were going forth from out of the midst of the 2 mountains. So something that Jesus is sending forth. It's the best I could come up with this. And with the first chariot were Redish horses. Now we have these 4 different horses, but only 2 have the same color as what's in the 4 horses in Revelation, so even that is different. And with the second chariot, black horses. And with the third chariot, white horses. And with the 4th chariot, spotted and dapple gray horses. And I responded and said to the angel speaking with me, who has been speaking now with him for 3 or 4 chapters, well, what are these, O Lord? And the angel answered, the one speaking with me, and said, well, these are the 4 winds of the heavens, of the heaven, and they go forth to stand beside the Lord of all the earth. Now, there's a few things here to bring out. The 4 winds are mentioned quite a few places, and you can go and see them all in our book, Entities of the Book of Revelation. And in the 4 winds are mentioned in Revelation 7:1, Jeremiah 49:36, Ezekiel 37:9 and 10, and Daniel 7:2 and 3. So the 4 winds, things that comes from all over. It's all-consuming, a totality of the earth. The 4 winds, everything is included. And the 4 winds, and they go forth to stand beside the Lord of all the earth. Now, I mentioned in chapter 4, verse 14, the Lord of all the earth, and I had it under as capital L, capital O, capital R, and capital D, which means Yahweh. But then I looked in the Hebrew, and I thought I must have not have done it right the first place, because it's not Yahweh, it's Adonai, Adon, not even Adonai. So Adon, which is number 113, means either a master or a Lord, L, small O, small R, small D. Adonai would be tied then to God, Lord, L, capital L, small O, small R, small D. So I was wrong in that putting that all as it would be Yahweh, and it wasn't the Lord of all the earth. It's way different than Jehovah or Yahweh, whatever it was pronounced. And so they now who was this that they were standing then? If it wasn't Yahweh, could be who was the ruler of all the earth at this time? Well, we are given another clue in Revelation 11:4, which is the New Testament. So it just says Kyrios. These are the two olive trees and the two lampstands standing before the Lord of the earth, and those are the two witnesses that come. And so right here, the master of all the Lord of all the earth. This is also Adon, not Adonai. So it should be probably a small L, which I do have down here, R-L-O-R-D, which it should be. So I'll just make it L-O-R-D. So this could have been, who was the Lord of all the earth? Well, you could say, well, maybe it was Jesus when he came. Could it be the beast? Because the witnesses are there, and Jesus is not with them, but they're coming at the time, and they are standing besides, in somehow with the beast, because we know that this is what their purpose is, to come and to warn the people of Israel and so forth, and cause the works of the beast to be slowed down till they were killed, and then they rose and were raised by God and went into heaven. You can read about that in the 11th chapter. So here again, these chariots and the horses and the winds and everything is similar to what's in Revelation, and with which were the black horses. They went forth upon the land of the north. The land upon the north we have in Revelation. And I saw, and behold, a black horse, and the one sitting upon it having a yoke balance scale in his hand. That doesn't have anything to do with going towards the north. And then in 1914, it goes, and before we go, the white horses, they went forth after them. And the white horse in Revelation 19:14 it mentions, and the militaries in the heaven followed him upon white horses, being clothed in clean white fine linen. So here it could be that these are the same horses in Revelation, but then the other two, the dapple gray and the spotted, are not in Revelation in those places. And so the spotted, when they went forth upon the south, and the dapple gray, they went forth and looked to travel about the earth. So these horses are out going and doing God's bidding, to check things out in certain places and to report back to him. And he said, go and travel about the earth. And they traveled about the earth. And he yelled out, the angel, and spoke to me, saying, behold, the ones going forth upon the land of the north cause rest for my rage in the land of the north. Well, the word is given as the word of God. But so, behold, the ones going forth upon the land of the north. Well, the land of the north is mentioned in many places in the Bible. Some of them, one of them was in Isaiah 14:13. It says, and I shall sit on a high mountain, upon the high mountains towards the north. And that was the fallen star who makes himself more powerful than any being. And that's in Isaiah 14:13. You can read about it. So if that was the case, then the beast has to do with the north, and then the rage. This would all have to do with the future, not anything to do with the time that Zechariah was writing this. In 6:9, and came to pass the word of the Lord to me, Zechariah, saying, take the ones from out of the captivity, from the rulers and from her profitable ones, and from the ones recognizing her. Well, the her is a virtue. The ones having, I think, where does it have the virtue here? Well, there's recognizing her. Someplace above it had virtue. I believe it's down here in the 6:11 or 6:14. That is virtue. Well, maybe I'm mistaken here, but I was thinking it was the same, but take the ones from the rulers and from her profitable ones and from the ones recognizing her. And you shall enter in that day into the house of Josiah, the son of Zephaniah, having come from out of Babylon. Now, here again, I think I did this wrong. Instead of having the son of Zephaniah, which he wasn't, it should be the one of Zephaniah. Just scratch out the son that I put in there. The house of Josiah was the king at the time that Zephaniah was prophesying in the book of Zephaniah. And so right after that, Jerusalem was taken and the Jews were sent to Babylon. But now you shall enter in that day into the house of Josiah, the ones that were there, and having come from out of Babylon. So these people that were there were still some probably that saw the original, that lived over the 70 years. They would have had to have been pretty old, but there could have been some. If you were 70 years old, it was 70 years in in Babylon. So you could have been 15. That would have made it 85. And then if you were 100 years old when you came back, you would have been less than that. You would have been 85 years old. So that's a possibility you would have seen would happen earlier. And apparently these are the ones he's calling, the ones profitable, the important people, and the rulers from the captivity. He's calling for them. And you shall take silver and gold, and you shall make crowns, and shall place them upon the head of Jesus, Joshua, Jesus, or Yeshua, the son of Josedek, the great priest. And we went through him. You can go back to chapter 3, and I go through all about Joshua and the name, and relates to the same name as Jesus. And you shall say to him, he is a priest, thus says the Lord Almighty, Pantocrator, behold, a male rising is his name. So again, he brings up this male rising. It was in 3:8. He mentioned the bondman named Rising. And this rising is as the sun. It's not a resurrection, but the rising of the sun. Anatoli. It's also used to mean east, for the direction of something east. The east, the gate Anatoli, the east gate. So the rising of the sun. And rising is his name. And from beneath him he shall rise and shall build the house of the Lord. Now, I would imagine this is probably the house of Ezekiel, last 10 chapters, 40 to 49 or 50. And he shall receive a virtue. And there's the virtue. I was thinking that was up above. It was reflecting to that, but it wasn't. It's later here. Virtue. And he shall sit and rule upon his throne. Now, this the male rising, which to me, who else could it be but Jesus? And there shall be a priest at his right, and peaceable counsel will be between both. So it'll be a time of peace. Sounds like the 1,000-year reign. But the crown will be to the ones waiting, and to the ones profitable of her. Now this her is referring to virtue, profitable of virtue, people that are virtuous. And to the ones recognizing virtue, her, and for the favor of the son of Zephaniah. Now, the son of Zephaniah, I'm not exactly sure. It says here to the sons of Zephaniah in the Complutensian Polyglot, who that would be referring to whoever that he was giving these crowns to, I suppose, that had returned from the time of Zephaniah, and the sons of the people that had returned is my best guess. And for a psalmon, we have a psalm. It's a transliteration there, in the house of the Lord. Now there's Lord caps. That would be Yahweh, Jehovah. And the ones far from them shall come and shall build in the house of the Lord. So other people. Now, here is where he's going, that the people at the time might have come against him because of the things he's saying from here on. Others shall come from far off and shall build in the house of the Lord, where they only want the people that have returned to build because the people of the land have come and wanted to help them build the house of the Lord, but really they wanted to ruin what the Jews were doing. And so maybe when he's saying this, and that would be the antithesis of what the Jews believe to be the right thing. And he's saying, well, others are coming to build the house of the Lord. And you shall know, for the Lord Almighty has sent me to you, me being Zedekiah, because it mentions him earlier here as the one. And you, the Jews, shall know, for the Lord Almighty has sent me to you. Well, for somebody to say that you've actually been sent, they didn't accept Jesus, who said the Lord sent him. So why would they have accepted Zechariah? So if they got mad and crucified Jesus, they could have very well have killed Zechariah between the altar and the temple, as Jesus later mentions. And it will be as if one's listening should have listened to the voice of the Lord your God. So listening to Zechariah saying, listening to me is like listening to the voice of the Lord your God. Well, I can see where the people didn't like Zechariah for whatever reason, would not want to hear that, would not accept it, and that was probably the main reason why he was killed. Chapter 7, it continues with Zechariah. In our next video seminar, we'll be going into chapter 7, and I hope you'll join us, and God bless.